Croatian heroines bravely endured terror and trauma, war crimes of rape, crimes against freedom, and disregard of the laws of the state and humanity. We thank them for sharing the truth. We thank them for their sacrifice, for surviving these evils to serve as witnesses. Thanks to their courage, everyone again speaks out in the hope that their tired voices will awake our conscience. They sacrificed for the freedom and independence of Croatia in wartime when Croatia did not have the power to protect them, and today when they struggle for recognition and justice. We are indebted to the victims and survivors.
Samo ljubav može spasit ovaj svijet.
At this, the 22nd anniversary of Serbian aggression against the Republic of Croatia, people around the globe remember a terrible war that shocked the conscience of the modern world by its deliberate carnage, primitivism, rape, and countless atrocities committed by the Serbian and Montenegran army and Chetniks. No one can forget the images and reports brought to our attention by the media of Serbian concentration camps, Vukovar under siege, its civilians marched to their deaths, ethnic cleansing, mass graves, sex camps, tens of thousands of rape victims, the shelling of the medieval city of Dubrovnik, destroyed towns, villages, religious and cultural sites. Nor should we forget the courage of those who fought against Serbian evil and gave their lives for the freedom and independence of Croatia, and those who courageously endured torture and indignities of all kinds, and managed to survive. The Republic of Croatia, when it declared its independence in 1991, was immediately attacked by the Serbian and Montenegrin army. The aggressors carried out vicious crimes, deliberately targeting the civilian population.
Already in January 1991, Croatian women appealed to General Kadijević of the Yugoslav People's Army to amicably resolve political problems of the former Yugoslavia. In an appeal reflecting the mood of the Croatian people, 64,000 citizens of Zagreb signed petitions urging peaceful resolution of the conflict. 29 busloads of Croatian women traveled to the military barracks in Belgrade to demand that their sons be sent home in hopes that this would weaken the numerical strength of the army and thus prevent war.
This movie addresses the experiences and concerns of women, children, and men who were raped in the war and are still awaiting prosecution of their victimizers, still seeking official status as victims of war crimes, entitled to moral, spiritual, and financial assistance. The victims are alone in their suffering. The criminals are among us. Sunny was just 8 months old when she was trapped with her mother in the occupied city of Vukovar. She and her mother were held captive in an apartment, where her mother was subjected to multiple rapes by Serbian soldiers. When Sunny's cries were heard by the soldiers, they hurled their heavy military jackets on her to muffle the sound of the child's weeping. Miraculously, Sunny survived.
I am Jacqueline. I lived in Vukovar. I was 18 years old in 1991 when the war began. My daughter was 8 months old. When Vukovar was occupied by Serbian soldiers, they kept me in an apartment there, alone with my daughter and my 8-year-old sister. After multiple rapes and torture, they took me to a concentration camp. They would rape me and throw their heavy uniforms on my small baby to muffle her cries. By some miracle, she survived.
The soldier grabbed me. I begged him to leave me alone for the sake of my child. He said these words to me: "First, I'll kill your mother. Then I'll kill your father. Then I'll kill your husband. I'll leave you and your son for my pleasure." He raped me and left. I stayed in the room crying.
After numerous rapes, they took me to a room for execution. There,
I found my daughter with her 4-year-old son, my grandson. My grandson was taken away and we have never seen him again. My daughter had to watch me being raped, and I had to watch the rape of my daughter.
The soldiers said to me, "You haven't done anything to us, but you're guilty because you're Croatians." One of the soldiers told me to take off my clothes. I said, "Please don't do anything to me." He said, "Take off your clothes or I'll kill your mother-in-law and daughter."
Today, 20 years after the war began, we have Croatian citizens of Serbian descent who do not accept Croatia as their homeland. They advocate for Greater Serbia. Granting amnesty has done great damage to the establishment of interethnic reconciliation. It is unacceptable for people who were terrorists and members of the Serbian army to serve in the Croatian parliament and to direct their constituents in the same way they did in 1991.
There cannot be a peace agreement here which involves an amnesty for those who committed these crimes. That will be unacceptable. The weight of the evidence is going to be overwhelming. It will have its own momentum.
They kept me in the village of Yugoslavia for 48 hours. I was at the mercy of anyone who wanted me. After that, I was transported to the concentration camp, Mitrovica in Serbia. When I arrived, they placed me in solitary confinement, and immediately the walls began to echo with the horrifying screams of people experiencing waterboarding and electrical torture. Whines, cries, people pleading for their lives. Pure horror.
They committed sexually perverse acts on me. They did unimaginable things to me. They humiliated me. They have made of me a monster. Today, I am mentally ill.
Serbo-Chetniks came to my home to arrest me. They saw me shoot them from the roof of my house and accused me of being a sniper. They said I would end up in a military court in Belgrade. Because I'm a Croatian, I had to put white cloth on the gate of my house, signaling to everyone that I was Croatian and free for the taking.
The widespread systematic use of rape as an instrument of war by the Serbian army and Chetniks between 1991 and 1997 has been documented by the United Nations and the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia.
One of the things that seems terribly important to me in this whole process is that at the end of the day, justice be done. Terrible crimes have been committed, crimes against the city of Vukovar, crimes against the Croatian soldiers who were in the hospital in Vukovar. Each individual there having the most horrible stories of what happened when the enemy came into their villages and rounded people up, destroyed homes, when neighbors went out and killed neighbors, raped women, killed children, rounded up men and put them into death camps. All these are crimes against humanity. They are violations of very fundamental principles of international law, and equally important, they go against all standards of human decency.
After the war and the establishment of a democratic political society, Croatian victims of sexual abuse did not gain recognition of their status as victims of war crimes. They are not recognized as such by society or by state institutions.
The next morning, I found my husband dead in the apartment. Then 2 Serbian soldiers put their hand grenades and Kalashnikovs on my table. One soldier ordered me to leave the room with the other. After the first did his job on me, then the second soldier took his turn.
When I walked into my house, 9 Serbian soldiers were there. Everything smelled of alcohol. They were all drunk and yelling like animals. Immediately, they stripped away all of my clothes, and I was naked in seconds. Countless hands started touching and probing me all over my body. They covered my eyes and nose with a cloth, and I began choking. They threw me to the floor. While one man held the cloth tight, they put their penises in my mouth. I lose my voice when I talk about it. When I lost consciousness, they threw me on a concrete slab. I don't know how long the rapes lasted. They committed perversions on me. 20 to 40 men. They killed 17 members of my family.
After interrogation, they took me to the Velopromet concentration camp in Vukovar, collection of old hangars. The men were led away for torturing and killing. The women were taken to be raped. I started to cry and begged them not to. One of the Serbian soldiers said, "It's your choice. It's me or 10 others, and then we'll put you before firing squad." It was terrifying. I screamed and cried.
I was the fourth in line for interrogation. They were vicious. They mocked me. They beat me. They held a kettle prayed to my neck. A member of the Chetniks from Yugoslavia raped me, one after the other.
15 of us were crammed into a truck, men and women. They transported us to the concentration camp in Mitrovica. As soon as we arrived, they jumped on us like rabid wild beasts. Men were separated to one side and stripped naked. We women were taken to room 14, where I was imprisoned for 1 month.
The UN estimates that between 20,000 and 60,000 women were raped by the Serbian military. In 2001, the Hague Tribunal elevated systematic rape from being a mere violation of the customs of war to one of the most heinous war crimes of all, a crime against humanity, second only to genocide.
They collected many of us women on the street. The first woman had to carry a white cloth that symbolized to all that we were free for the taking for sex. They walked us through the city. They separated the men from the women, the children from their mothers. The city was full of dead people. They were killing people on all sides of us. It was a horror. There were passionate cries. People were killed en masse. People without a head, severed body parts all around, streams of blood on the road. They were dirty and disgusting. There were certainly 15 or 16 Serbian soldiers. They all raped me. One after the other, one after the other. It was awful.
The Manjača concentration camp was established by the Yugoslav People's Army. The guards and torturers were predominantly Chetniks from various parts of Serbia. It was winter, but they stripped us from our clothes, except our undershorts. We were beaten mercilessly every day. I was strung up by my feet from the ceiling with barbed wire. They doused me with water, and they ran electric current through my body. They tied me to a metal bed frame, doused me with water, and again sent electric current through me. Each day, they took me out and subjected me to torture, beatings, rape. They sliced me with knives and filled my wounds with salt.
When the bearded Chetniks came, they lined us up against the wall. The streets were full of corpses. They collected them with bulldozers. The Serbian major, Slivančanin, told everyone that Serbs were immediately free to go home. Individuals who considered themselves Yugoslavs could leave in 2 or 3 days. Croatians, perhaps after a week, or never.
Today, 22 years after the war, we are still seeking recognition of their status as war victims and still seeking to bring the criminals to justice. With the help of the international community, we must accomplish this to allow us to develop into a modern democratic society. The victims contributed not only to the defense of our country, but to the establishment of the free, democratic state of Croatia. It is not and will not be free or democratic until it has the strength to demand justice, punishment, and compensation from the aggressor state, as well as a validation of the sufferings of each and every victim.
When I got out of the camp in 1992, I gave a statement to the court about my wartime experiences, about everything that happened to me. The court gathered evidence from 1992 until 2007. In that time, they apprehended only 2 criminals, and nothing has yet been decided about them.
did not return to Vukovar because the Serbs who killed, raped, tortured, and robbed us still live in that city. Not one of them has yet been held accountable for his crimes.
After I returned to Vukovar, I encountered one of my rapists. When he saw me, he froze. When I saw him, I froze, but I found my courage because I was in my own country now. I said, "How do you have the nerve to sit and work here after everything you did, from torturing people to raping us?" He has worked in the Vukovar City Hall for 12 years. I filed my lawsuit against him 6 years ago, and it still hasn't been processed.
I returned to Vukovar in 1998. I encountered one of my rapists on the streets of Vukovar. On one occasion, I had an umbrella and I began to beat him and scream. He fled. After that, the police began an investigation. I provided the police with all the evidence of the crime. The fiends were arrested, but after just 1 week, they were released pending trial.
The rapes that were occurring against Croatian and Bosnian Muslim women were part of an organized tactic of warfare. By that I mean, again, this is sociology and anthropology at work. By raping the women, the Serbs knew that those women would be treated as outcasts when they were reintegrated afterwards in their communities. And by causing this kind of upheaval in the family structure of those families, they would again weaken them, demoralize them, and make it easier to achieve a military victory. So I think we have to look at the rape not just as an individual crime, but as a military tactic of aggression.
22 years later, Sunny is a young woman. She now understands what was done to her mother and to her. Sunny is strong. She has survived the heavy burden of the enemy's jackets and abuses, and the crime of silence and suppression that continues today.
Stini svoju povijest piše, tom ne može niko prošlost da izbriše. Varaju se i ne misle tako, što se krvlju brani, ne pušta se lako. Ko na tvrdoj stini svoju povijest piše, tom ne može niko prošlost da izbriše. Mi smo tu odavna, svi moraju znati, to je naša zemlja. Tu žive Hrvati. Kroz vremena gruba i kroz ljute boje, branili smo časno mi ognjišće svoje. Čuvaše nam pređi ovu rodnu grudu, nisu zbog slobode ginuli za lud.